The rain had just stopped, leaving droplets clinging to the window of a luxury penthouse overlooking Central Park. Haley West opened her eyes, her head pounding like a drum. Her mouth felt dry, her thoughts cloudy. She sat up slowly, instantly realizing she was not in her own bed, or even her own apartment. Silk sheets, marble floors, a skyline view. This definitely wasn't Brooklyn. Then she saw it. On the nightstand beside her, a thick white envelope. With trembling hands, she picked it up and pulled out a document. The words at the top hit her like a slap. Certificate of marriage. Her name, his name, a real signature, a real seal. Before she could blink again, the bathroom door opened. A man stepped out, tall, clean-shaven, shirt casually unbuttoned at the collar, jet black hair, sharp jawline, cold gray eyes. He looked at her like she was a stranger who had wandered into the wrong life. Then he said, without a hint of emotion, "You signed it. We're married. And I don't break contracts." Haley stared at him. What do you mean married? This has to be some kind of joke, right?" He didn't answer. Instead, he poured himself a glass of water and sipped it calmly. "I needed a wife. You were available." He glanced at her. "Now, unless you want a lawsuit, I suggest you read what you signed last night." Her heart dropped. This wasn't a dream. This wasn't even a prank. It was real. She had no idea who this man was. But now, she was his wife, and something about the way he looked at her told her this man didn't joke. Ever. Haley West was the kind of woman who wore mismatched socks and forgot where she placed her phone 5 times a day. She lived in a tiny walk-up apartment in Brooklyn, cluttered with canvases, coffee mugs, and color palettes. A freelance graphic designer with a heart full of dreams, Haley believed in love, art, and the power of coffee to fix almost anything. She had just come out of a 5-year relationship that ended with a betrayal she hadn't seen coming. Her ex-fiancé had left her for someone with more ambition and better connections, whatever that meant. So last night she did what any broken-hearted 20-something might do, drown her sorrows in tequila with her best friend. The last thing she remembered was ordering another round. The rest was a blur. She was emotional, impulsive, stubborn when pushed, but never cruel. Her strength came from her vulnerability, even if she didn't realize it yet. Ethan Stone, on the other hand, was everything Haley wasn't. Billionaire tech CEO, Harvard graduate, disciplined, sharp, distant. Known in the business world for being brilliant and brutal, Ethan ran Stone Tech like a machine. And that included his personal life. He didn't do love. He didn't do chaos. He didn't do surprises. But what he did have was a growing problem. His board of directors, and more importantly, his formidable grandmother, demanded that he appear more relatable, more human. A stable family man image would secure him the next level of power within the company and protect him from internal sabotage. So he hired a legal team to arrange a controlled fake marriage. The bride would be hand-picked, the terms clear, the timeline strict. But Haley West was never part of the plan. And now he was stuck with a woman who smelled like cinnamon and sunshine and ruined everything he thought he knew about control. Haley sat at the edge of the velvet couch in the living room, still in the oversized shirt she must have borrowed. Her fingers clutched the marriage certificate like it might bite her. Across from her, Ethan stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, already dressed in a crisp, navy suit, looking like a man who had already moved on to his next board meeting. "I want an explanation," she said, her voice shaking slightly. He didn't turn around. "You were at the Madison Club last night. My legal team arranged a private meeting with a contract bride. Someone vetted, someone discreet. You were not her." She blinked. "So, why didn't you stop it?" "I didn't know until this morning," he replied calmly, but the marriage was witnessed, filed, legal. Haley's jaw dropped. You're telling me I accidentally stole someone else's fake marriage contract? That's exactly what I'm telling you, he said, now facing her. She stared at him. Well, this is clearly a mistake. We can fix it. We'll get an annulment. Ethan walked over, set a folder in front of her. We could, but that wouldn't solve either of our problems. Haley hesitated before opening it. Inside was a thick stack of legal documents, full of clauses, signatures, stipulations. My board expects me to be married by the end of this week, he said. If I'm not, I risk losing votes, leverage, and millions in upcoming negotiations. And you, well, I imagine $500,000 could fix a lot of your problems. Her breath caught. Excuse me. You stay married to me, publicly, for 6 months, no intimacy required. You play your part at events, give the press something to chew on, and after that, divorce, no questions asked. You get $500,000. Clean. Legal. She leaned back like she'd been slapped. You're actually serious? Ethan didn't blink. Completely. Haley stood up, pacing the room. Her rent was overdue. Her mother's hospital bills were piling up. She had no steady clients. But marry a stranger? Live a lie? This is insane, she muttered. But profitable, he added, cool as ever. She turned to him, fire in her eyes. Why me? His gaze didn't waver. Because last night, despite being drunk, you spoke with more honesty in 5 minutes than most people do in a lifetime. Her mouth parted slightly. She didn't expect that. Ethan took a step closer. I don't need someone perfect. I need someone real, and for some ridiculous reason, you are now legally my wife. Silence. Then Haley let out a laugh that sounded more like surrender. You're actually serious. I don't joke, Ethan said again. She sighed long and deep. 6 months? He nodded. No intimacy? Not unless you want to complicate things. And I walk away after that? Clean? With $500,000 and a divorce with dignity? She looked down at the paper again, hands trembling. Her whole life had been messy lately. Maybe one more wrong decision wouldn't matter. Or maybe, just maybe, it might change everything. Haley closed her eyes, exhaled slowly, and said the words that would flip her world upside down. All right, I'll do it. The elevator doors slid open with a soft chime. Haley stepped out onto the top floor, dragging her single overstuffed suitcase behind her. This place is insane, she muttered as she stepped into Ethan's penthouse. No, their penthouse now. Polished hardwood floors, minimalist furniture, white walls with massive abstract paintings, and not a single pillow out of place. It looked like a showroom, not a home. Haley felt like a splash of watercolor dropped into a black and white photograph. Ethan was waiting by the kitchen island, looking effortlessly sharp in another tailored suit. Your room is down the hall to the left, he said. You'll find the contract on the nightstand. Read it. Sign it. She raised an eyebrow. Wow, romance is dead. He didn't even look amused. You'll find everything clearly outlined, including shared appearance dates, privacy clauses, and conflict resolution protocols. Haley rolled her eyes. You sound like a robot. Ethan didn't respond. Instead, he walked away and disappeared into his office. Later that evening, Haley explored her new home. The guest bedroom where Triggekinker spau, Taikanachadi o har Gekti Techi Kedrumaichi was bigger than her entire Brooklyn apartment. Fresh sheets, modern decor, a walk-in closet she didn't need, and a bathroom stocked with high-end toiletries still in plastic. She stood in front of the mirror staring at herself. What did you just sign up for, Haley? The next morning was their first breakfast as a married couple. Haley stumbled into the kitchen in a hoodie and pajama shorts, only to find Ethan already seated at the glass dining table, reading financial reports. She reached for the coffee machine, struggling to figure it out. How does this spaceship work? Without looking up, Ethan said, Press the silver button, not the red one. She paused. Which one's silver? He glanced up, clearly annoyed, and stood. With one swift motion he turned the machine on, handed her a mug, and returned to his seat. She sipped. Okay, fine. You get points for the coffee. He didn't respond. The silence stretched awkwardly. I had a dream last night, Haley said. You turned into a talking spreadsheet. It was horrifying. Ethan didn't laugh. Of course he didn't. But there was the smallest twitch at the corner of his mouth. Living with Ethan Stone was like moving into a library where emotions weren't allowed. He had rules: no shoes inside, no clutter, no guests, no loud music, no leaving food in the fridge past expiration. Haley broke at least 2 rules per day. One afternoon, she left a wet towel on the bathroom floor. The next day, she rearranged the spice rack alphabetically but backwards, just to see if he'd notice. He did, immediately. You switched oregano and paprika, he said over dinner. Wow, someone needs a hobby. I have one. It's called managing a billion-dollar company. You should try therapy, or yoga, or alcohol. But it wasn't all bickering. There were moments, like the night Haley had a panic attack over her mother's medical bills. She tried to hide in her room, but Ethan noticed. He didn't say anything, just knocked gently on the door and left a note outside. Send me the invoice, it's handled. Or the time she found him working past midnight, face tight with stress. She placed a plate of microwave mac and cheese next to his laptop without a word. He didn't thank her, but he finished every bite. They didn't understand each other, but they were beginning to notice each other. One evening, as Haley sat cross-legged on the couch sketching, Ethan walked in and paused. You always draw with your left hand? She looked up, surprised. Yeah, why? He hesitated. It's rare, she smiled. So is a CEO who notices something that small. Their rhythms started to align, awkwardly at first, but then more naturally. She filled the apartment with soft chaos. He quietly adjusted, one rule at a time. Neither of them said it aloud, but the line between fake and real was already beginning to blur. By the 3rd week, the first public appearance arrived, a charity gala hosted at the Plaza Hotel. Ethan needed Haley on his arm. The board would be there. The press would be watching. Every detail mattered. Haley stood in front of the mirror, tugging nervously at the emerald green dress laid out for her by Ethan's assistant. It hugged her curves in all the right places. The matching heels looked dangerous. She turned as Ethan walked into the room. His footsteps stopped. She looked up. He was already dressed in a midnight black tuxedo, tie perfectly knotted, hair slicked back. His eyes flickered down her body. Not long, not obvious, but she saw it. You look acceptable, he said. She rolled her eyes. Careful, that almost sounded like a compliment. I'm managing expectations, he replied. She smirked. And you look like someone who hasn't smiled since the Obama administration. The gala was packed with New York's elite. Ethan slipped into his practiced role effortlessly, shaking hands, nodding politely, delivering short, calculated answers. Haley stayed close, smiling on cue, clinking glasses of champagne. She didn't drink. At one point, Ethan leaned in, lips brushing her ear. You can relax your smile. You're starting to look like you're in pain. She whispered back. I am. These heels are medieval torture. He chuckled softly. And it wasn't fake. For a second, Haley saw a different man hiding behind that suit, one who might actually feel something. A woman in her 50s approached them, sharp-eyed and diamond-clad. Ethan, she said warmly, and this must be your surprise. Haley extended a hand. Haley, wife, not surprise. The woman blinked, then smiled tightly. How modern. As she walked away, Haley whispered, How rude. She's on the board, Ethan said under his breath. Of what? Mean Girls? Ethan fought a smirk. You're lucky you're charming. Later that night, in the car, Ethan spoke first. You did well tonight. Haley looked at him. That's it? No, thank you for not embarrassing me. He glanced at her. I don't thank people for doing what's expected. Then remind me to surprise you next time. Their public appearances continued, fundraisers, networking events, interviews. The media dubbed them the stone-hearted CEO and his sunshine wife. But behind closed doors, something shifted. He started asking questions about her day. She started learning how he liked his coffee strong, black, no sugar. He offered to review her freelance contract with a shady client. She defended him when a magazine called him emotionally bankrupt. They began to talk. Really talk. In short bursts at first, like strangers passing notes, then longer, more open. One night, as they stood on the balcony watching the city lights, Haley said quietly, "Do you ever feel like you're just performing all the time?" Ethan didn't answer right away. Then, "Yes, but I don't think I'd know how to stop." She looked at him. "Maybe you need someone who makes you forget the script." His eyes found hers. There was something in his gaze she hadn't seen before. Hesitation, vulnerability, longing. He stepped closer, not touching her, just close enough to feel the static between them. "You're not what I expected," he said. "Neither are you." Then came the turning point. A tabloid leaked a photo of Haley hugging a man outside a cafe, her ex, Jason. The article was cruelly titled, "Fake Wife, Real Affair." Haley found Ethan already reading it over breakfast, the headline glaring on his tablet. She braced herself. "It's not what it looks like." "I know," he said flatly. She blinked. "You do? You don't look at him the way you look at me." That caught her off guard. "And how do I look at you?" He set the tablet down. "Like you're afraid to." That night, she asked him, "Why did you really agree to this contract? Not just the board, not the company." He hesitated. Then, very quietly, "Because I wanted to see what it would feel like to come home to someone who wasn't afraid of me." She didn't know what to say, so she reached across the table, took his hand, and held it. No words, just warmth. And in that silence, something between them stopped pretending. The knock at the penthouse door came late on a Thursday. Haley opened it, expecting a delivery or maybe Ethan's assistant. Instead, a tall woman in a cream designer coat stood there, lips curved in a polite but calculating smile. "Hi," the woman said. "I'm looking for Ethan." Haley hesitated. "And you are—" "I'm Victoria Hale, his ex." Just then, Ethan appeared behind Haley. His face froze, not with surprise, more like quiet dread. "Victoria," he said coolly, "this is a surprise?" She laughed softly. "I'd say so. Considering the last time we spoke, you told me never to contact you again." Ethan stepped forward, blocking Haley slightly. "Why are you here?" Victoria's eyes flicked to Haley. "I saw the news, the marriage. I had to see it with my own eyes." Haley folded her arms. "Well, now you have. Anything else?" Victoria's smile widened. "Plenty, but I'll keep it short. Ethan, can we talk?" He glanced at Haley, then nodded once. 5 minutes. They stepped into the study and shut the door. Haley stood in the hallway, arms crossed, trying to ignore the sinking weight in her chest. She didn't want to care. She shouldn't care. This was fake, temporary, contractual, but it didn't feel fake anymore. Not to her, and maybe not to him either. Right? When Ethan came out 15 minutes later, he looked tired. She was still waiting. "She's leaving tomorrow," he said simply. "What did she want?" "She wants to get back together." Haley tried to laugh but couldn't. "And?" He paused. "I told her no." She nodded slowly. "Because of the contract?" Ethan's jaw tightened. "No, because of you." That should have been comforting, but the words felt fragile, like glass not yet set. Haley didn't ask more. She just walked past him and into her room. The next few days felt off. Ethan grew distant, not cold, not rude, just withdrawn. He worked late, missed breakfast, skipped their usual evening tea. Haley tried not to notice, tried to pretend her heart wasn't aching. One night, she stood in the kitchen, staring at the pot of pasta she had made for two. Ethan walked in, looked at the table, then at her. "I'm not hungry," he said, and turned to go. Haley called after him. "You're running away." He stopped. "Not from her," she said, voice low. "From this." He turned around. "This isn't real, Haley." Her breath caught. "It's a contract," he added. Haley nodded. "You're right. But it could have been more." Silence. Then she whispered, "I can't be the only one who felt it." Ethan didn't respond. That night, she packed a small bag and left. No goodbye, no note, just silence. Haley moved into a friend's spare room in Soho. She resumed freelance work, buried herself in deadlines and art, smiled when she had to, cried when she was alone. Ethan didn't call. She told herself it was fine, that she had imagined everything, that maybe he had always been stone-hearted, like the tabloids said. But some nights she caught herself staring at her phone, hoping, wishing. 2 weeks passed. Then, one morning, she received a package, no sender listed. Inside, a copy of their marriage contract, folded neatly, and a note. "You were never part of the plan, but you became everything I never knew I needed. E." Haley stared at it for a long time. Then she picked up her phone. That evening she stood outside the Stone Tech Tower. Ethan came down himself. When he saw her, he stopped, completely still. "I read your note," she said. He nodded. It was overdue. She took a step closer. "Why didn't you fight for me?" "I was afraid," he said. "Afraid it was too real, that you'd leave if I admitted I wanted more." "You're an idiot," she said softly. "I know." A pause. "I don't want to be your fake wife anymore," she said. His heart sank. "I understand. I want to be your real one." Ethan blinked, and then, for the first time in his adult life, he forgot the plan, the logic, the contract. He leaned in and kissed her. It wasn't a performance. It wasn't for the press. It was for them. Finally, real. Haley had never liked driving in the rain, but that morning she made the trip anyway. Ethan had been called into back-to-back meetings, and she wanted to surprise him by picking up lunch from his favorite spot in Brooklyn. He always said their truffle sandwiches were overpriced, but he secretly loved them. The sky was gray, the streets slick with light drizzle. She glanced down at her phone just long enough to confirm the address. She didn't see the black sedan run the red light. The crash wasn't violent, more like a hard slam that shook her chest and made the world spin. Her head hit the window, then everything faded into static. When Ethan got the call, he dropped everything. His assistant had never seen him like that, pale, panicked, furious with himself. He left a room full of investors without apology and ordered his driver to head straight to St. Luke's Hospital. Haley was conscious when he arrived, lying in a hospital bed, hooked up to an IV. Her forehead was bandaged, one arm was scraped, but she was alive. She smiled when she saw him. "Guess I'm bad at surprises." Ethan stepped closer, his hand trembling slightly as he brushed a loose strand of hair from her face. "You scared the hell out of me," he whispered. "I'm okay." "You're not okay. You could have—" He stopped himself. She looked at him quietly. "Would you still be here if we weren't married?" He blinked. "What?" "If this contract never existed, if I'd never signed that stupid paper, would you have come?" His eyes locked on hers. "Yes." Haley looked away. "Then say it." He hesitated, but not for long. "I love you." Her eyes met his again. "I didn't know it at first," he continued. "I thought it was just convenience." Then it was comfort. But somewhere along the line, I stopped seeing you as part of a deal. I started seeing you as mine. Haley didn't speak. Her eyes shimmered with tears, not from pain. And I was a coward, he added. You walked away, and I let you, because I didn't know how to give you what you deserve. She reached out, her fingers wrapping around his. You're here now. I'm never leaving again. He sat beside her, held her hand like it was the only thing anchoring him to earth. Silence filled the room, not cold, not distant, but whole. She squeezed his hand. Say it again. I love you. A tear slipped down her cheek. Good, she said, because I love you too. 6 months later, the contract officially ended. No headlines, no public statements, just a quiet date circled in Ethan's calendar, the day the agreement would dissolve, and they'd be legally free of each other, except neither of them brought it up. That evening, Haley returned home from a gallery meeting to find the penthouse dimmed, candles lit along the hallway, and soft jazz playing in the background. The usual Ethan move would have been efficiency over ambiance. This wasn't him, until she reached the rooftop. Ethan stood there, hands in his pockets, New York City glittering behind him. He was dressed in a dark suit, but no tie. His expression wasn't cold. It was warm, certain. Hey, she said softly. You came home late. I took the long way. Good, gave me time to finish this. He stepped aside. Behind him stood a small table, simple, elegant. On it, a velvet box. Haley stared at it, then at him. You're not doing what I think you're doing. I probably am, he said. But this time there's no legal team, no loopholes, no timeline. He took the box, opened it. Inside was a ring understated, classic, the kind of thing she'd pick for herself. I don't want a contract with you anymore, he said. I want a life, a messy, complicated, spontaneous life with you in it. Haley blinked fast, her hands trembling. I know I'm not easy, Ethan added, but I love you, fully, stupidly, irrevocably, and if you'll still have me this time, I want to do it right. She smiled, eyes wet. No script? No script. No board of directors? Just one very hopeful man. She stepped closer, took his hand. You already had me, she said, since the moment you made me coffee and forgot to add sugar. Ethan exhaled, something between a laugh and a breath of relief. So, that's a yes? She took the ring, slipped it on herself, then kissed him. I think that's a yes. 3 months later, they married again. No paparazzi, no board members, just a lakefront cottage in Vermont, close friends, soft music, and a ceremony where they both forgot their vows and ended up laughing through their tears. When Haley whispered, I do, Ethan responded simply, I always have. As they kissed under a sky painted with stars, she thought about the night they met. A drunken mistake, a wrong name, a signed contract, and somehow all of it led here, not fake, not forced, just love real and permanent. In the heart of New York City, Isabel Grayson stood in her elegant apartment, surrounded by the soft glow of candlelight and the scent of fresh roses. She was a rising star in the fashion world, known for her breathtaking designs and her unshakable determination. Tomorrow she would marry Thomas Bradley, her college sweetheart, the man who had promised her forever. The wedding dress hung in the corner, a cascade of white silk shimmering under the chandelier. Isabel traced her fingers along its delicate fabric, imagining the life ahead, a life filled with love and dreams coming true. She smiled to herself, picturing Thomas waiting at the altar, his warm brown eyes locked on hers. But tonight something felt off. Thomas had been distant lately, claiming work kept him busy. Isabel decided to surprise him at their new Manhattan apartment, the one they had bought together for their married life. She grabbed her coat, her heart fluttering with excitement, and headed across town. The city buzzed around her, taxis honking, lights flashing, but all she could think about was seeing him. She arrived at the building, took the elevator to the penthouse floor, and unlocked the door with a quiet turn of the key. What she saw shattered her world. There, in the living room they had decorated together, Thomas stood with his arms around another woman. Not just any woman, but Madeline Grayson, Isabel's younger half-sister. Madeline's laughter filled the air, sharp and mocking as she leaned into Thomas, her dark hair falling over his shoulder. Thomas froze when he saw Isabel, his face pale, his mouth opening but no words coming out. Madeline turned, her lips curling into a smirk. "Oh, Isabel," she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "You're early." Isabel's chest tightened, her breath catching in her throat. She wanted to scream, to demand answers, but her voice failed her. The room spun, the walls closing in. She stumbled backward, the image of Thomas and Madeline burned into her mind. Without a word, she fled, her heels clicking against the hardwood floor as she ran out into the night. The cold air stung her face, tears blurring her vision, but she couldn't stop. Everything she had believed in, everything she had built with Thomas, was a lie. She found herself at a sleek upscale bar in the heart of the city, a place where the elite gathered to sip expensive cocktails and trade secrets. Isabel collapsed onto a stool, her hands trembling as she ordered a drink. The bartender slid a glass of whiskey her way and she downed it in one gulp, the burn in her throat a welcome distraction from the ache in her heart. She stared into the amber liquid, replaying the scene over and over. How could Thomas do this? How could Madeline, her own sister, betray her so cruelly? A man sat down beside her, his presence commanding yet quiet. He wore a tailored suit, his dark hair neatly combed, and his eyes held a depth that drew her in. "Rough night?" he asked, his voice low and steady. Isabel glanced at him, too raw to care about appearances. "You have no idea," she muttered, taking another sip. He introduced himself as James Wentworth, CEO of Wentworth Enterprises, a name she vaguely recognized from the fashion world. They talked first about nothing, then about everything. She poured out her pain, her anger, her need to make them pay. "I want to hurt them," she said, her voice breaking. "I want them to feel what I feel." James listened, his expression unreadable, then leaned closer. "I can help with that," he said. "Come with me tonight. There's a gala across town. Be my wife for the evening. Let them see you rise above this." Isabel stared at him, the absurdity of the idea cutting through her haze of grief. But something in his gaze, a flicker of understanding, made her nod. She didn't know why, but she trusted him. An hour later, Isabel stood at the gala, transformed in a stunning gown James had somehow arranged. The room buzzed with New York's elite, designers, investors, and media moguls all turning to look at her. James stayed by her side, his hand resting lightly on her back, his presence a shield against the world. Cameras flashed as whispers spread. "Who's that with James Wentworth?" Isabel lifted her chin, forcing a smile, knowing the news would reach Thomas and Madeline soon. For the first time that night she felt a spark of hope, a chance to reclaim her power. Little did she know, this moment would change her life forever. The morning after the gala, Isabel Grayson woke up in a guest room of James Wentworth's sprawling penthouse overlooking Central Park. Sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, casting a warm glow over the sleek furniture and modern art on the walls. Her head ached from the whiskey and the whirlwind of the previous night, but the memory of standing beside James, facing the world with defiance, lingered like a lifeline. She pulled on a robe, her mind racing with questions. What had she agreed to? Who was this man who had stepped into her chaos without hesitation? James was waiting in the living room, a cup of coffee in hand, his dark suit impeccable as always. He looked up as she entered, his expression calm but unreadable. "Good morning," he said, gesturing to a tray of breakfast on the glass table. "I hope you slept well." Isabel sat across from him, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "Why did you help me last night?" she asked, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside her. James took a sip of his coffee before answering. "I saw someone who needed a way out, and I needed something too, a way to break free." He explained his situation with a quiet intensity that drew her in. James was the CEO of Wentworth Enterprises, a fashion empire built by his family, but he was trapped under the thumb of his father, Edward Wentworth. Edward had arranged for James to marry Charlotte Reed, a calculating heiress from another powerful New York family, to secure a business alliance. "I can't stand her," James admitted, his jaw tightening. "She's ruthless, and my father doesn't care. He only sees profit." Isabel listened, her own pain mirrored in his words. Then James made his offer. "Stay with me, pretend to be my wife a little longer. It keeps Charlotte at bay, and it gives you a chance to show Thomas and Madeline you're not broken." Isabel hesitated, the idea both absurd and tempting. She thought of Thomas's betrayal, Madeline's smirk, and the life she had lost in a single moment. "What's in it for me beyond revenge?" she asked. James smiled faintly, the first crack in his composed facade. "A fresh start. A job at Wentworth Enterprises. You're a designer, aren't you? Show the world what you're capable of." It was an offer she couldn't refuse. She nodded, sealing the deal with a handshake that felt strangely binding. Days turned into weeks, and Isabel settled into her new role at Wentworth Enterprises. James gave her a corner office with a view of the skyline and a team to bring her designs to life. She threw herself into her work, sketching late into the night, her pencil flying across the page as she created gowns that blended elegance with rebellion. James often stopped by, leaning against the doorframe to watch her. "You're good," he said one evening, holding up a sketch of a flowing black dress with silver accents. "Better than good." Isabel blushed, unused to praise after months of feeling invisible. "Thanks," she replied, meeting his gaze. There was something in his eyes, a warmth she hadn't noticed before. Their conversations grew deeper over time. One night, as they sat on the penthouse balcony, the city lights twinkling below, James opened up about his past. "My mother, Grace, was everything to me," he said, his voice low. "She loved art, music, beauty. But my father betrayed her. He had an affair, and when she confronted him, he staged an accident to silence her. I was 10 when she died. I saw the car wreckage, the blood. I couldn't save her." Isabel reached out, her hand resting on his. "I'm so sorry," she whispered, her heart aching for the boy he had been. She shared her own story in return. "My mother died when I was young, too. Cancer took her. My father remarried Eleanor Pierce a year later, and then came Madeline. I tried to love her, but she hated me from the start. She wanted everything I had, my father's attention, my success, and now Thomas." James squeezed her hand, his touch steadying her. "You're not alone anymore," he said. The words hung between them, heavy with promise. Their bond grew through small moments. One afternoon, James surprised her with a silver necklace, its pendant a tiny star. "It reminded me of you," he said simply, fastening it around her neck. His fingers brushed her skin, sending a shiver down her spine. Another evening, they stood together at the edge of his office, watching the sun dip below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Isabel felt a pull toward him, a longing she couldn't name. She caught herself wondering what it would be like to kiss him, to let this pretense become real. But doubt gnawed at her. Was this just part of the act? Could she trust him with her heart after Thomas? The line between fake and real blurred with each passing day. At a company event, James introduced her as my wife with such conviction that even Isabel almost believed it. Guests congratulated them, unaware of the truth, and Isabel played along, her arm linked with his. She caught his eye across the room later, and he smiled, a rare, genuine smile that made her pulse race. For the first time since the betrayal, she felt safe, seen, valued. But beneath the surface, questions lingered. "What are we doing?" she asked him one night, her voice soft as they sat by the fireplace. James looked at her, his expression serious. "Whatever it is, I don't want it to end." Their fragile connection was tested when Thomas appeared at her office unannounced. He stood in the doorway, his face haggard, his eyes pleading. "Isabel, I made a mistake," he said. "Madeline seduced me, but it's you I love. Give me another chance." Isabel stared at him, the man she had once adored, now a stranger. Memories of their past flooded back, picnics in Central Park, late-night talks, promises of forever. But then she saw Madeline's smirk, the apartment, the betrayal. "No," she said firmly, her voice steady. "You broke us. I'm moving on." Thomas left, defeated, and Isabel felt a weight lift from her shoulders. She turned to find James watching from the hall, his presence a quiet reassurance. That night, as she sat alone in her office sketching under the dim light, Isabel realized something had shifted inside her. James wasn't just a means to an end anymore. He was someone she cared about, someone who saw her when no one else did. She touched the star necklace, a symbol of their growing bond, and wondered if this could be love. But the world outside was closing in. Madeline and Eleanor were plotting, Charlotte was lurking, and Edward's shadow loomed large. Isabel knew the peace she had found with James wouldn't last. Trouble was coming, and it would test everything they had built. Weeks had passed since Isabel Grayson agreed to James Wentworth's unconventional deal, and life at Wentworth Enterprises had become her anchor. Her office buzzed with activity, her team bringing her latest designs to life, fabrics and sketches scattered across tables. She thrived in the chaos, her talent shining brighter with every project. James often lingered nearby, offering quiet praise or a nod of approval, his presence a steady comfort in her new world. Their bond had deepened, unspoken feelings threading through their every interaction, but Isabel kept her guard up, wary of trusting too much too soon. Trouble brewed beneath the surface, and it began with a visit from Madeline Grayson. Isabel's half-sister stormed into her office one crisp morning, her heels clicking sharply against the polished floor. Madeline's dark eyes flashed with resentment, her perfectly styled hair framing a face twisted with anger. "You think you can just waltz into my life and take everything?" she spat, slamming a folder onto Isabel's desk. Inside were documents claiming Isabel had stolen one of Madeline's designs, a sleek gown with bold geometric patterns, now featured in Wentworth's upcoming collection. "I created that," Madeline insisted. "You're a thief." Isabel stared at the papers, her stomach sinking. She recognized the design, but it was her own, sketched months ago in the quiet of her old apartment. "This is ridiculous," she said, her voice firm despite the rising panic. "I don't steal, you know that." Madeline smirked, crossing her arms. "Tell that to the lawyers. Mother and I are suing you. You'll lose everything, just like you deserve." Before Isabel could respond, Madeline turned and left, leaving a storm of doubt in her wake. The accusation spread like wildfire through New York's fashion circles. Whispers followed Isabel at every meeting, colleagues exchanging glances, clients questioning her integrity. She confronted James that evening in his office, the city skyline glowing beyond the glass walls. "They're trying to ruin me," she said, handing him the legal notice. "Madeline and Eleanor want me out of the picture." James scanned the document, his jaw tightening. "This is nonsense," he said. "I've seen your work. This is yours. I'll handle it." True to his word, James mobilized his legal team, top attorneys from Manhattan's finest firms. They dug into Madeline's claims, uncovering inconsistencies in her timeline, proving Isabel's sketches predated the alleged theft. Within days, the lawsuit was dismissed, but the damage lingered. Isabel felt exposed, her reputation bruised, and she couldn't shake the sting of her sister's betrayal. "Why does she hate me so much?" she asked James one night, staring out at the twinkling lights from his balcony. He stood beside her, his voice low. "She's jealous. You have what she wants, talent, strength, a place here. She'll never forgive you for that." As Isabel grappled with her family's attack, a new threat emerged. Charlotte Reed entered the scene, her arrival announced by a flurry of media attention at a Wentworth Enterprises gala. Tall and striking, with auburn hair and a smile that didn't reach her eyes, Charlotte was Edward Wentworth's choice for James's bride. She approached Isabel during the event, her tone deceptively sweet. "So you're the famous wife," she said, sipping champagne. "James has told me so much about you. Quite the Cinderella story." Isabel bristled at the condescension, but held her composure. "I'm here to work," she replied, "not to play games." Charlotte's next move proved she was no stranger to games. Days later, rumors surfaced in the press, vicious lies claiming Madeline had a history of plagiarism, her career built on stolen ideas. The stories painted her as a fraud, her reputation crumbling overnight. Clients dropped her, sponsors pulled funding, and Madeline's name became a punchline in the industry. Isabel read the headlines in her office, confusion warring with unease. She hadn't orchestrated this. Who had? She found James in the boardroom, his expression grim as he scrolled through his tablet. "Did you do this?" she asked, holding up a newspaper with Madeline's face splashed across it. James shook his head. "No, but I know who did." He explained Charlotte's handiwork, her calculated strike to warn Isabel. "She's sending a message," he said. "Stay out of her way, or you're next." Isabel's hands clenched into fists. "She's destroying my sister to get to me." "That's insane." James met her gaze, his voice steady. "That's Charlotte. She doesn't care who she hurts as long as she wins." The fallout hit hard. Madeline called Isabel late one night, her voice raw with fury. "You did this," she accused. "You and your precious James. You couldn't stand me having anything, so you took it all." Isabel tried to explain. "I had nothing to do with it. This is someone else's doing." But Madeline hung up, her words echoing in Isabel's ears. She felt a pang of guilt, not for Madeline's actions, but for the fractured family they had become. Eleanor's silence only deepened the rift, her absence a sign she was plotting something worse. James stood by Isabel through the chaos, his support unwavering. One afternoon, as they reviewed designs in her office, he paused, his hand brushing hers. "You're stronger than they realize," he said. "That's why they're afraid of you." Isabel looked at him, his words igniting a flicker of hope. "And you?" she asked. "What do you see in me?" He hesitated, then spoke softly. "Someone worth fighting for. Someone I'd save again if I had to." The air between them shifted, charged with something unspoken. That moment was interrupted by a memory surfacing in Isabel's mind, a fleeting image of waves crashing, a hand pulling her from the water. 6 years ago, she said suddenly, her eyes widening. "Hamptons, the beach. That was you, wasn't it?" James nodded, a faint smile touching his lips. "You were drowning. I couldn't let you go." The revelation hit her like a wave, connecting their past to this tangled present. "Well, didn't you tell me sooner?" she asked. He shrugged. "I didn't want you to feel indebted. I wanted you to stay because you chose to." Their conversation was cut short by a knock at the door. Thomas Bradley stepped inside, his face drawn, his posture slumped. Isabel tensed, memories of his betrayal flooding back. "What do you want?" she asked, her tone cold. Thomas shifted uncomfortably. "I need to talk to you. Alone." James moved to leave, but Isabel stopped him. "Stay," she said. "He doesn't get to dictate anything anymore." Thomas swallowed hard, then spoke. "I messed up, Isabel. Madeline came onto me and I was weak. I never stopped loving you. Please, give me a chance to make it right." Isabel stared at him, the man she had once built her future around. She remembered their laughter, their dreams, the way he used to hold her hand. But those memories were tainted now, overshadowed by his choice to turn to Madeline. "You made your bed," she said, her voice steady. "Lie in it. I'm done with you." Thomas's shoulders sagged, defeat written across his face. "You've changed," he muttered, then walked out, leaving silence in his wake. James stepped closer, his hand resting on her shoulder. "You okay?" he asked. Isabel nodded, though her heart ached. "I will be," she said, meeting his gaze. "Thanks to you." He smiled, a rare softness breaking through his usual reserve. "We're in this together now," he said. The words felt like a promise, a lifeline amid the storm brewing around them. But the storm was far from over. Madeline's humiliation fueled her rage. Eleanor's schemes grew darker, and Charlotte's shadow loomed larger. Isabel sensed the tension building, a web of deceit tightening around her. She glanced at James, his strength a beacon in the chaos, and knew they would face it together. What she didn't know was how far her enemies would go, or the price they would all pay when the truth came crashing down. The air at Wentworth Enterprises crackled with anticipation as Isabel Grayson prepared for the biggest night of her career. The company's annual fashion gala was underway, a glittering event held in a grand ballroom overlooking the Hudson River. Designers, critics, and New York's elite filled the space, their voices blending with the soft hum of a string quartet. Isabel stood backstage adjusting the final stitches on her centerpiece gown, a flowing masterpiece of midnight blue and gold. This was her moment to prove herself, to rise above the whispers and accusations that had haunted her. James Wentworth watched her from the sidelines, his dark suit blending into the shadows. He had been her rock through the chaos, his belief in her unwavering. As she caught his eye, he offered a small nod, a silent promise of support. Isabel smiled back, her nerves settling. The past weeks had tested them, with Madeline's lawsuit and Charlotte's schemes threatening to tear her down, but tonight felt like a turning point. She stepped onto the runway as the lights dimmed, the crowd falling silent. Her collection dazzled, each piece a testament to her resilience, and the applause that followed washed over her like a wave of redemption. But the triumph was short-lived. As Isabel returned backstage, Madeline Grayson emerged from the crowd, her face a mask of fury. She wore a sleek black dress, her presence sharp and menacing. "You think you've won?" she hissed, stepping closer. "You took everything from me. My career, my pride. I'll make you pay." Before Isabel could react, Madeline pulled a knife from her clutch, the blade glinting under the stage lights. Gasps rippled through the crew as Isabel stumbled back, her heart pounding. "Madeline, stop," she said, her voice trembling but firm. "This isn't the answer." Madeline lunged, her rage blinding her to reason. Time slowed as Isabel braced herself, but a figure darted between them. Thomas Bradley, his face pale with determination, threw himself in front of her. The knife struck his chest and he staggered, blood staining his shirt. Isabel screamed, catching him as he fell, his weight pulling her to the floor. "Thomas!" she cried, pressing her hands against the wound, her fingers slick with red. His eyes met hers, clouded with pain but steady. "I'm sorry," he whispered, his voice fading. "I loved you. Always." His breath rattled, then stopped, his body going limp in her arms. The room erupted in chaos, security rushing to subdue Madeline, guests shouting in panic. Isabel knelt there, frozen, tears streaming down her face as she cradled Thomas. His sacrifice shattered her, a flood of guilt and grief washing away the anger she had held for so long. She had hated him for his betrayal, but in his final act he had given her everything he had left. James reached her side, kneeling beside her, his hand on her shoulder. "Isabel," he said softly, pulling her gently away as paramedics arrived. She clung to him, sobbing into his chest, the weight of loss overwhelming her. But the night's horrors were far from over. As security dragged Madeline away, her wild laughter echoing through the hall, Charlotte Reed seized her chance. She had slipped backstage during the commotion, her cold eyes fixed on Isabel. With a signal to 2 hired men, she orchestrated a swift abduction. The men grabbed Isabel, their grips bruising her arms, and dragged her out a side exit before James could react. She fought, kicking and twisting, but a cloth pressed over her mouth silenced her cries, darkness swallowing her as she lost consciousness. Isabel woke in a dimly lit warehouse, the air thick with dust and the distant hum of the city. Her hands were bound, her body slumped against a metal chair. Charlotte stood before her, her auburn hair gleaming under a flickering bulb, a folder in her hands. "You've caused me a lot of trouble," she said, her voice icy. "James was mine until you came along. Sign this." She tossed the folder at Isabel's feet, revealing documents that would transfer Isabel's shares in Wentworth Enterprises to Charlotte. "Do it, and you walk away. Refuse, and you don't walk at all." Isabel glared at her, defiance burning through her fear. "You're delusional," she said. "James will never love you, no matter what you do to me." Charlotte's smile tightened, her composure cracking. "He'll have no choice when you're gone," she replied, stepping closer. "Edward's already on my side. He'll cut James off if he doesn't marry me. This is your last chance." Isabel shook her head, her voice steady. I'd rather die than give you anything. Charlotte's patience snapped. She raised her hand to strike, but a crash interrupted her. The warehouse door burst open and James stormed in, his face a mask of fury. Behind him were his security team, their weapons drawn. "Let her go," he roared, his voice echoing off the concrete walls. Charlotte spun to face him, her confidence faltering. "James, you don't understand," she said, her tone pleading. "This is for us, she's nothing." James ignored her, rushing to Isabel's side as his men subdued Charlotte's hired muscle. He untied her, his hands trembling as he pulled her into his arms. "Are you hurt?" he asked, his breath ragged. Isabel shook her head, clinging to him, her body shaking from the ordeal. "I'm okay," she whispered. "You found me." James held her tighter, his voice breaking. "I'd tear this city apart to find you." Charlotte lunged forward, desperate, but security pinned her down, her screams fading as they dragged her away. Back at the penthouse, James explained the stakes. "My father threatened to disown me if I didn't leave you," he said, pacing the room. "He sent Charlotte after you to force my hand. He thinks I'll cave." Isabel stood, her strength returning as she took his hand. "What do we do?" she asked. James turned to her, his eyes fierce with resolve. "We fight," he said. "I have evidence of his crimes, tax evasion, fraud. He's done worse than you know. I'll take him down, but I need you with me." Isabel nodded, her heart swelling with trust. "I'm with you," she said. "Always." James pulled her close, his lips brushing her forehead, a silent vow between them. She thought of Thomas, his final act of redemption, and felt a bittersweet peace. He had given her a second chance and she wouldn't waste it. But the battle wasn't over. Edward Wentworth still loomed, his power a dark shadow over their future. James had defied him to save her, and now they faced the consequences together. The night stretched on, Isabel sitting by the fireplace, James beside her. She touched the star necklace he had given her, its weight a reminder of their bond. "I didn't think I could feel this again," she admitted, her voice soft. "Safe, wanted." James looked at her, his gaze intense. "You're more than wanted," he said. "You're everything to me." The words hung in the air, a confession that bridged their past and present. Isabel leaned into him, her head resting on his shoulder, and for a moment the world outside faded away. But danger lingered, a storm gathering strength. Madeline's arrest wouldn't silence her hatred, Charlotte's defeat only fueled her desperation, and Edward's wrath waited to strike. Isabel knew the cost of this night. Thomas's blood on her hands, the scars it left on her soul. Yet with James beside her, she felt ready to face it all. Their love, forged in fire, would be their shield. The final reckoning was coming, and it would test every ounce of their courage. The days following the chaotic gala were a blur for Isabel Grayson. But James Wentworth refused to let the storm consume them. Holed up in his penthouse, they planned their next move against Edward Wentworth, the man who had orchestrated so much of their pain. Isabel sat at the dining table, papers spread before her, while James paced, his phone pressed to his ear. He had spent hours with his lawyers piecing together evidence of Edward's crimes, tax evasion records, fraudulent deals, and hidden accounts that stretched back decades. "This ends now," he told her, his voice steady with resolve. "He won't control us anymore." Isabel nodded, her hands steady as she reviewed the documents. She thought of Thomas Bradley, his lifeless body in her arms, his final words echoing in her mind. His sacrifice had given her clarity, a fierce determination to fight for the life she deserved. "We'll do this together," she said, meeting James's gaze. He stopped pacing, crossing the room to take her hand. "Together," he repeated, his touch grounding her. The weight of their shared losses hung between them, but so did a growing hope, a promise of something better beyond the darkness. James acted swiftly. He leaked the evidence to the authorities, tipping off the IRS and FBI with meticulous files that left no room for doubt. Within hours, news broke across New York, headlines screaming about Edward Wentworth's arrest. Television screens flashed images of him in handcuffs, his stern face twisted with disbelief as agents escorted him from his lavish Upper East Side mansion. Isabel watched from the penthouse, the city skyline a silent witness to his downfall. "It's over," she whispered, relief washing over her. James stood beside her, his arm around her shoulders. "Not quite," he said. "There's more to settle." Charlotte Reed's fate came next. After her failed attempt to force Isabel's hand in the warehouse, James's security team had handed her over to the police. The charges piled up: kidnapping, assault, conspiracy, each one backed by witness statements and surveillance footage from the gala. Charlotte's trial was swift, her polished demeanor crumbling as the judge sentenced her to years behind bars. Isabel saw the news on her phone, Charlotte's mugshot staring back at her, a hollow shell of the woman who had once wielded power like a weapon. "She got what she deserved," James said, his tone firm. Isabel nodded, though a flicker of pity stirred within her. Hate had destroyed Charlotte, just as it had nearly destroyed them all. Madeline Grayson faced her own reckoning. The Bradley family, devastated by Thomas's death, pressed charges against her for his murder. Isabel attended the trial, sitting in the back of the courtroom, her heart heavy as evidence unfolded. Madeline's knife, her fingerprints, the security footage from the gala, it all painted a damning picture. She took the stand, her voice shrill with defiance. "Isabel drove me to it," she claimed, her eyes wild. "She took everything from me." The jury didn't buy it. They deliberated for less than a day before returning a guilty verdict, sentencing Madeline to life in prison. Isabel left the courthouse in silence, the weight of her sister's choices pressing on her chest. Eleanor Pierce, Madeline's mother and Isabel's stepmother, tried one last desperate move. She showed up at the penthouse a week after the trial, her face gaunt, her once impeccable attire disheveled. "Isabel," she pleaded, standing in the doorway James had reluctantly opened. "We're ruined. The Grayson name is nothing now. Help us, your family." Isabel stepped forward, her expression cold. "Family?" she said, her voice cutting through the air. "You turned Madeline against me. You tried to destroy me. You don't get to ask for help now." Eleanor's shoulders slumped, tears streaking her face, but Isabel didn't waver. "Leave," she said, "and don't come back." James closed the door behind Eleanor, the final thread of her old life severed. With their enemies vanquished, Isabel and James turned to healing. The wounds of the past lingered, Thomas's death a scar on her heart, the betrayal of her family a quiet ache. But James's presence softened the pain, his strength a balm she hadn't known she needed. One evening, as spring painted New York in shades of green, he took her hand and led her to the rooftop. "I have something for you," he said, pulling a small box from his pocket. Inside was a ring, simple yet stunning, a single diamond catching the fading light. "This isn't pretend anymore," he said, his voice low. "Marry me, Isabel, for real this time." Isabel's breath caught, her eyes searching his. She saw the boy who had saved her from the waves 6 years ago, the man who had stood by her through every storm. "Yes," she said, her voice trembling with joy. James slipped the ring onto her finger, pulling her into a kiss that felt like a beginning. The city stretched out below them, a canvas of possibilities, and for the first time, Isabel believed in forever again. They planned a small wedding, far from the chaos of Manhattan. The Hamptons beckoned, its beaches a quiet refuge where their story had unknowingly begun. On a warm June day, Isabel walked across the sand in a flowing white dress, barefoot and free, her star necklace glinting at her throat. James waited by the water's edge, his suit jacket discarded, his smile wide and unguarded. A handful of close friends gathered, the ocean breeze carrying their laughter. The officiant spoke of love and resilience, words that resonated deep within Isabel's soul. When it was time for their vows, James went first, his voice steady but thick with emotion. "Isabel, you came into my life when I'd forgotten how to feel," he said, holding her hands. "You brought light to my shadows, strength to my fight. I promise to stand by you, to love you, to build a life where you'll never doubt your worth." Tears welled in Isabel's eyes as she squeezed his hands. "James," she began, her voice soft but clear, "you saved me, not just from the water, but from myself. You gave me hope when I had none. I promise to be your partner, your home, through every storm and every sunrise." They exchanged rings, the waves crashing gently behind them, and sealed their vows with a kiss. The small crowd cheered, clapping as James lifted Isabel into his arms, spinning her on the sand. She laughed, the sound bright and unrestrained, a melody of joy she hadn't known she could still play. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of pink and gold, a perfect backdrop to their new chapter. Later, as the reception faded into a quiet night, Isabel slipped away to visit Thomas' grave. It lay in a small cemetery nearby, a simple stone marking his final rest. She knelt beside it, her fingers tracing his name. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice breaking, "for giving me a chance to live again. I'll never forget you." A breeze rustled the trees, carrying her words away, and she felt a peace settle over her, a release from the guilt that had lingered since that fateful night. James found her there, his footsteps soft on the grass. He didn't speak, just knelt beside her, his hand resting on her back. They stayed in silence, the weight of loss mingling with the promise of their future. When Isabel stood, she took his hand, her fingers intertwining with his. "Let's go home," she said, her voice steady. James nodded, leading her back to the beach house they now shared, a place where they could start anew. The days that followed were filled with quiet moments, sketching together in the morning light, walking hand in hand along the shore, building a life free from the shadows of their past. Wentworth Enterprises thrived under their joint vision, Isabel's designs earning acclaim, James's leadership steering the company to new heights. They faced the world as partners, their love a fortress against any lingering doubts. One evening, as they sat on their porch watching the stars, Isabel leaned against James, her head on his shoulder. "We made it," she said, her voice a mix of wonder and gratitude. He kissed her forehead, his arm tightening around her. "We did," he replied. "And we'll keep making it, every day." The night stretched out before them, infinite and bright, a testament to a love that had conquered betrayal, loss, and vengeance. Isabel closed her eyes, the sound of the waves a lullaby, and knew she had found her forever. The lights inside the penthouse pulsed with a rhythm too perfect to be spontaneous. A grand Manhattan rooftop party, attended by hedge fund heirs, supermodels, and the kind of billionaires who never carried wallets, was winding down. But in a quiet corner of the balcony, surrounded by gold-trimmed glasses and cigarette smoke, a private game was still going. Alexander Grayson sat in a leather lounge chair, shirt sleeves rolled up, wristwatch glinting under the city glow. In his hand was a glass of scotch he had barely touched. His eyes were cool, detached, scanning the glittering skyline like a man who had conquered it already. Across from him, Blake Callahan smirked, tapping his cigar against the ashtray. They had played this game before, many times. Bet a woman, bet a number, bet a secret. It was never about the prize, it was always about control. But tonight was different. Blake leaned forward and turned his phone toward Alexander. The screen showed a security feed from the lower levels of the building, grainy and gray, but sharp enough. A girl was loading trays in the staff kitchen. Her dress was plain. Her movements were quiet, but precise. Her long hair was tied in a thick braid down her back. "Bet you can't even get her to talk to you." Blake's voice was amused, condescending. "She is not just quiet. She is untouched." Alexander barely looked. "And?" Blake's grin widened. "She is from some farm town in Texas, lives in a rented room with 4 other girls. No social media, no boyfriend, no parties, no history. She is not just innocent, she is untested, untouched. Her name is Ellie Mae, and rumor is, she has never even kissed a man." Alexander raised an eyebrow. "So?" Blake shrugged. "I dare you. Get her to dinner. One night, that is all. Alexander sipped his drink, considering. This was beneath him. Silly. Childish. But something in her stillness on the screen, something in the way she moved without seeking attention, made him pause. "What is the catch?" he asked. Blake leaned back. "The catch is, she is the only woman in this building who would not sell her soul to stand next to you." Alexander smiled slowly, challenge accepted. He did not know her, but he had undone dozens like her before. This one would be no different. Or so he thought. He walked back into the party and down the service stairs, loosening his collar, rehearsing something casual to say. When he found her behind the catering station, arranging spoons with delicate care, he cleared his throat. She looked up, startled but not nervous. Her eyes were not wide with recognition. She did not blush. She did not stammer. She simply said, "Can I help you, sir?" And just like that, the game changed. He tried charm. She answered with calm. He tried power. She countered with stillness. She did not flirt. She did not retreat. She just stood there, looking at him like a man, not a title. He left that room feeling strangely winded. He walked in thinking he would break her in one night. But one look from her, one pause between her words, and suddenly he could not remember how to breathe. Ellie Mae Carter had never seen a skyscraper before she boarded the bus to New York City. Her entire world until then had been flatland, stretching acres across central Texas, where sunrises came in quiet gold and the night smelled of hay and hard work. She was born into a family of 6 children, raised on a cattle farm where chores came before school and where kindness was expected but praise was rare. Her mother believed in scripture and strong coffee, her father in silence and sweat. There were no vacations, no mall trips, no prom nights. There was only what needed to be done and who needed to be fed. But Ellie was different. She did not complain about the work, but she often stayed up late, scribbling poems in the margins of her school books or sketching wildflowers in her church notes. She wanted more, not more money, not even freedom in the flashy way the TV shows described it. She wanted stillness, purpose, beauty in motion. So at 19, after saving money from selling hand-sewn aprons at a local farmer's market, she applied for a scholarship program that placed rural girls in internship programs across the country. She thought she would end up in a library or a museum. Instead, she was assigned to a luxury hospitality apprenticeship program inside one of Manhattan's most exclusive real estate properties. For 6 weeks, she would rotate through every department, cleaning, serving, managing. She said yes, without hesitation. The moment she stepped into the city, her senses were assaulted. The noise, the steel, the movement. She had never seen people rush without making eye contact. She had never been in a place where no one smiled back. But she adapted, slowly, quietly, and without complaint. She shared a bunk room with 3 other girls, all louder, more experienced, more cynical. They teased her for her plain clothes and soft accent. She did not mind. She listened, watched, and learned. By the 4th week, she had memorized the schedule of the entire building. She knew which guests tipped, which managers yelled, and which elevators stuck between floors. She kept her head down. She moved like she was part of the wall. But she noticed everything. She noticed the man with the midnight-colored suits who never smiled. She noticed how everyone moved out of his way like he was royalty, how even the air changed when he entered a room. She knew his name was Alexander Grayson, that he was 35, that he owned more properties than the mayor, and more cars than her whole town combined. But she did not care, not in the way the other girls did. They whispered about him like he was a myth, some cruel prince made of stone and scandal. Ellie thought he looked tired, not weak, just heavy, like he carried something no one ever offered to help him set down. She never expected him to speak to her, So when he appeared beside her that night in the back prep kitchen, she was stunned, not afraid, not impressed, just confused. He asked her name. She told him. He asked if she liked working here. She said she was grateful. He said she did not talk like other girls. She replied that she was not trying to. He smirked, but it faltered. Most women tried to impress him. Ellie made him feel like he was the one being studied. The encounter lasted 5 minutes, but it followed him for days. He thought about her when he was on conference calls, when he was sitting through board meetings, when he walked into his penthouse and found it too quiet. He remembered her eyes, calm, unshaken, unreachable. She did not chase him. She did not linger near him hoping to be noticed. She returned to her tasks as if nothing had happened. And that was when he knew he was not in control of this game anymore. Blake teased him. Other men laughed. One even tried to approach her a few nights later. She turned him down with a single word. No. She said it like a door closing, like a girl who knew exactly what she did not want. Alexander watched all of it from a distance. Something in him itched, restless, curious. He started staying later at the office, started finding reasons to visit the lower levels. He made sure she was assigned to his floor. She never acted surprised, never gave him more than was asked. But her presence lingered. Her stillness pressed into him like a thumbprint. One night, he left her a note, just a folded card with a time and place. Rooftop, 11. She showed up exactly on time. No makeup, hair in a braid, a soft blue dress that belonged to a different decade. He asked her why she came. She said she was tired of avoiding what she already knew was happening. He asked what that was. She said, "Whatever this is." He smiled then. Not the practiced one, the real kind, the kind that cracked something open. That night he learned something terrifying. Ellie Mae Carter did not flirt. She did not scheme. She simply existed. And existing, in a world like his, was more powerful than anything he had ever tried to tame. Alexander Grayson had always understood power. It came in contracts and capital, in silence and expectation. He learned young that people either feared you or needed you, sometimes both. By the time he turned 30, he had already bought out 3 competitors and quietly dismantled 2 more. His reputation wasn't built on charm or theatrics. It was built on precision, ruthlessness, and yet none of it worked on Ellie. The untouched farm girl from nowhere didn't flinch when he stood too close. She didn't blush when he looked too long. Her stillness was not shyness. It was strength. He hadn't planned to pursue her. The original dare had been a joke, a whispered provocation during a late-night poker game on his penthouse balcony. "Bet you can't even get her to look at you twice," Blake had said, smirking, nodding toward a building camera feed. "She's not just untouched, she's Amish or something." "She's not Amish," Alexander had said, barely glancing up. "She's just not interested." Blake had laughed. "Exactly, that's the point. You've betted heiresses, CEOs, models. This one, you couldn't break her in one night if you tried." The rest of the table laughed. Alexander said nothing. But that night, he didn't sleep. The next day, he watched Ellie more closely. Not like a predator. Like a man suddenly aware that he wasn't immune to curiosity. She moved like the world wasn't watching, like she had nothing to prove. She spoke to people softly, only when necessary, but when she did, they listened. He started asking for her by name, requested she assist with inventory, asked for her presence at events. Slowly, the others noticed. The whispering started again, louder now. Some of the staff began treating her with forced politeness, others with veiled contempt. One manager even tried to reassign her, calling it a better fit. Alexander reversed the decision with a single phone call, but he never explained why. Ellie did not ask, until one evening, 3 weeks into the slow unraveling of his control, she finally said what neither of them had dared speak aloud. "Why me?" They were in the back service elevator, the hum of the lift filling the space. She wasn't looking at him, just at her reflection in the mirrored wall. You've got 1,000 women orbiting your world. Why me? He didn't answer right away. When he did, his voice was quiet. Because you're not orbiting anything. You're just standing still. She turned to him then. That's not a reason. It is to me. The doors opened, but neither moved. Something hung in the air between them. Tension, yes, but more than that. Recognition. They were both used to being unseen in different ways. He was seen only as what he owned. She was seen as what she lacked. But together, something shifted. That night, he didn't sleep again. The next morning, he had flowers delivered to her bunk room. She returned them. No note, just a quiet refusal. He smiled when he heard. She was a wildfire wrapped in linen, and she didn't even know it. The turning point came during a rooftop event for international investors. It was late spring. Ellie was assigned to work the logistics, coordinate between the catering team and the event planner. Alexander was scheduled to speak. He spotted her the moment he arrived, not because she was trying to be seen, because she never tried. And still, he couldn't stop seeing her. She wore a modest navy dress, flat shoes, and a lanyard badge. Compared to the diamonds and silk around her, she looked like a shadow. And yet, he found her first. Their eyes met across the rooftop. For a second, neither moved. Then, slowly, she turned back to her clipboard. He felt the burn of something in his chest. Maybe guilt, maybe desire, maybe something deeper. He made his speech, toasted the expansion, shook hands with ambassadors and executives, but the moment he was free, he went to her. "You're good at this," he said. "I've had practice," she replied without looking up. "Is that your way of accepting a compliment? Is that your way of giving one?" He smiled. "Touché." There was a pause. She sighed, setting down her clipboard. "Look, I know about the dare." He blinked. "What?" "I'm not stupid, Mr. Grayson. I heard things, and I know what men like you do when they're bored." Her voice didn't shake. "But I'm not a game, and I won't be a mistake." He stared at her. For the first time, he didn't have a defense. He didn't deny it, didn't excuse it. "You're right," he said. "It started that way, but it isn't that now." "Isn't it?" she asked, meeting his gaze. "Then prove it." The challenge wasn't in her tone, it was in her stillness. She wasn't daring him, she was offering him one last chance. Do better, be better. That night, he called Blake. "Game's off," he said. "I lost the moment she looked at me like I was just another suit." Blake laughed. "So you didn't get her?" "No," Alexander said, "but I think she got me." The following days blurred into something strange. He didn't pursue her, not obviously. He started showing up where she was scheduled, noticing when she looked tired. Once, he slipped a protein bar into her apron pocket during a 12-hour shift. Another time, he had a pair of work shoes sent to her room after noticing the blisters on her heel. She said nothing, but she wore the shoes. When his mother visited the city, he asked Ellie to prepare the guest suite. His mother later asked, "Who's the girl with the eyes like autumn storms?" "Someone I can't stop thinking about," he replied. One night during a late cleanup shift, the lights flickered. A storm was rolling in. Power dipped. Elevators stalled. The building was still. Ellie stood alone in the service hallway, holding a mop. Alexander approached from the other end, flashlight in hand. "Scared of storms?" he asked. "Only of what comes after," she said. He didn't touch her, just stood near. "Tell me something you've never told anyone." She looked at him. Then slowly she said, "Sometimes I pretend I'm not afraid of wanting more." He exhaled. "Me too." Then came the night, the one he hadn't planned, the one she hadn't prepared for. They ended up in the penthouse by accident. Or maybe it was something else. She was asked to deliver a package. He was reviewing late-night reports. She knocked. He opened the door. Neither spoke for a moment. Then, without invitation, she stepped inside. He watched her move through the space, barefoot, hair down, soft cotton dress brushing her knees. She looked nothing like the women who had stood in this room before, and that was exactly why he couldn't look away. She turned slowly. "You said you wanted something real," she whispered. "Then stop waiting for permission." He didn't move at first, but when he did, it was slow, reverent, as if afraid to shatter something sacred. She reached for his hand. Their fingers touched, and just like that, the game ended. Not with a conquest, but with surrender of a different kind, one that didn't look like losing, one that felt like finally choosing something that mattered. She'd never touched a man before, not like this, not willingly, not with intention. And yet, when her fingers curled gently around Alexander's, there was no trembling, only quiet understanding. The kind that lived between two people who were more afraid of silence than of sound. He had kissed 100 women, maybe more, but never slowly, never like now. With Ellie, it wasn't about want, it was about wonder. Her eyes didn't close the way others did. They stayed open, wide, steady, as if she needed to see every moment to believe it was real. He didn't pull her into his arms. He waited, and when she stepped closer on her own, when her chest brushed his, when her breath warmed the hollow of his throat, he felt something deep in his ribs loosen. "Tell me to stop," he murmured. She shook her head. "No, tell me the truth." He paused, then whispered, "I didn't want to win the dare. I just wanted to be near you long enough to forget why I ever agreed to it." Her lips parted. "And now? Now I'd rather lose you than lie to you." Her breath caught. "Then don't lie, but don't leave either." He cupped her face. "I won't." The first kiss wasn't fire. It was breath, a soft exhale shared between two people who had forgotten how to be gentle with themselves. His hand didn't roam. It rested at the small of her back. Her fingers didn't grab. They lingered at the edge of his shirt collar, learning his shape like a language. Later, as they sat on the edge of his bed, the city lights behind them flickering like a heartbeat, Ellie whispered, "I'm not what you're used to." "Good," he said. "I'm tired of what I'm used to." She smiled faintly. "And I'm not fragile, just careful." "You should be," he replied. "The world isn't kind to women who trust too easily." "That's why I watch," she said. "I see what people hide." "What do you see when you look at me?" A boy who forgot how to be held. That broke something in him, not loudly, quietly, like a window finally opened after years of dust and heat. She asked him nothing that night, not about his past, not about his scars, but when her hand brushed one along his ribs and he tensed, she didn't pull away. She pressed her palm against it gently, like it deserved to be acknowledged. "It's from before," he said, "when I still believed pain made me invincible." "You don't believe that now?" "No," he murmured. "Now I think pain makes us honest." They didn't sleep together in the way people assumed. Their bodies met, yes, but there was no frenzy, no desperate clawing, just a long unfolding of skin and soul. She guided his hand to her hip, to the place she had always hidden beneath oversized jeans and farm dresses. He kissed it softly. She guided his mouth to her collarbone. He lingered. When he slid her dress off her shoulders, he did it like an apology. And when he finally saw her fully, he didn't smile. He looked reverent, like she was sunlight for the first time in winter. She didn't hide, didn't flinch, not when he ran his fingers along her spine, not when he whispered that she was beautiful. She had always hated that word, too vague, too often used as currency, But when he said it, it felt earned, meant. Her voice was quiet. I don't know what happens after this. Then don't think about after, he said. Just think about now. They stayed like that until the sun crept between the buildings and painted gold across the bed. He didn't ask her to stay, but she did, curled beside him, heartbeat slow, lips swollen from kisses that meant something. And in the hush of that room, they made a promise, neither spoke aloud, that the dare was over, that what had started as ego had become something terrifyingly real. The next morning, he made coffee. She folded the blanket. They didn't rush, didn't pretend they had answers. But when she stood in the doorway, hair loose, shirt buttoned wrong, he stepped behind her and said, You changed everything. I didn't mean to. Exactly, he said. That's why it matters. Over the next few days, something shifted between them. Not publicly. They kept their distance at work. She still clocked in, still cleaned the utility room, still greeted people with quiet dignity. He still sat in meetings, still led calls with Tokyo and Berlin. But at night, when the lights dimmed and the rest of the world quieted, she'd find herself walking to the penthouse, and he would be waiting, not always with touch, sometimes just with tea, or silence, or a book left open to a poem she might like. One night she brought a journal, let him read a few pages. He didn't laugh, didn't judge. He read slowly, carefully, and when he finished, he said, You've felt too much for one lifetime. Then maybe I'm ready to feel something good. He kissed her fingertips in response. The turning point came when his father visited, a man cut from marble and expectation, tall, silver-haired, eyes like razors. He watched Ellie walk by the office once, then asked Alexander, She's not your usual type. She's not a type at all, Alexander said. She's real. His father said nothing, but later Ellie found herself reassigned to a different floor. She didn't ask why. She just packed her things and left quietly. That night, she didn't show up. Alexander waited, and when she didn't come, he called her. No answer. He went to her building, waited outside. When she finally appeared, her face was unreadable. You let him move me, she said. I didn't know, he said, but I should have seen it coming. You said I changed everything, she replied, but nothing's different. I'm still disposable. You're not. Then why didn't you stop him? Because I've spent my whole life letting him control my moves, but not anymore. Talk is easy, she said, so show me. The next morning, Alexander resigned from 3 board seats, donated stock to a female-led foundation, fired 2 senior advisors, including the one who had signed off on her transfer, and he did it all before lunch. That night, he left a note in her mailbox, just one line. You were never a dare. You're the reason I'm done playing games. She showed up at the penthouse that night. No questions, no apologies, just 2 mugs of hot cocoa. They sat on the balcony in silence, and when he reached for her hand, she didn't pull away. She laced their fingers together. She leaned in slowly, not for a kiss, but for closeness. And when their foreheads touched, he whispered, You're the first thing I ever chose for no reason but love. She didn't say it back. Not yet. But the way she rested her head on his shoulder was enough, because some truths didn't need words. They just needed time. The first time she let herself fall asleep in his bed, she expected to wake up alone. Instead, she woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of the shower running. Alexander wasn't gone. He was in the next room, humming lowly, as if unburdened. She stretched slowly, her body sore in quiet, beautiful ways. Her dress was folded neatly on the armchair. Her journal sat untouched on the nightstand. He hadn't tried to peek. He never did. When he stepped out of the bathroom, towel around his neck, hair damp, he looked at her like she was the beginning of something he never thought he'd get to have. You stayed, he said softly. You didn't make me feel like I had to leave. He walked to her, kissed her forehead, and said, Today might get messy. She raised an eyebrow. More boardroom drama? More like fallout, he said, handing her a tablet. The screen showed an article. The headline was sharp, mean, and designed to provoke. Billionaire CEO's secret nights with farm girl janitor more than just a dare. Her heart dropped. Below the headline was a photo, blurry, grainy, but unmistakable, the two of them stepping into the penthouse late at night. He wasn't touching her, but the suggestion was loud enough. Who leaked this? She asked. I don't know yet, but it doesn't matter. Yes, it does, she said, standing, her voice rising. People will think I'm here because I slept with you. Let them think, he said, quiet but firm. What they think doesn't change who you are. No, she said, eyes narrowing, but it might change what you do about me. He reached for her, but she stepped back. I need to think, she said, alone. She left before he could stop her. The elevator ride down felt longer than it ever had. That afternoon, the whispers spread. In the break room, in the elevators, in the hallways that once ignored her. Some stared, some smirked. A few looked at her with thinly veiled pity. She didn't cry, not even when someone posted a screenshot of the article on the custodial crew's group chat with the comment, "So that's how you clean penthouses." That night she didn't go back. Alexander didn't text, didn't call. He knew her well enough now to give her space, but she could feel him, the ache of distance, and she hated that it mattered so much. The next morning, she handed in her badge. The HR woman didn't look surprised. She just nodded and said, "Please clear your locker by noon." Ellie walked out of Hartwell Tower with a cardboard box and her head high. She took a bus home. Her hands shook the entire ride. Meanwhile, Alexander stood in front of the press for the first time in 2 years. "I am not here to entertain gossip," he said into the microphones, "but I will say this. The woman you're asking about didn't seduce anyone. I'm the one who pursued her. And yes, it started as a dare, one I deeply regret. But what followed wasn't a game. It was the most honest thing I've known." Someone shouted a question. Was she aware of the dare when it began? "No," he said, "and if she never forgives me for that, I'll still spend the rest of my life trying to be the man she thought I was when she first looked at me." His statement went viral. Some mocked, some defended, some asked who she was, where she came from, but none of them really knew her. None of them had seen the way her hands folded laundry like prayer, the way her eyes held too much and still stayed soft. That night, Ellie sat on her front porch, watching the wind bend through the cornfields. Her younger brother Sam sat beside her, quiet. "Is it true?" he asked finally. "Did he bet on you?" "He did," she said, "but that's not why I stayed." Sam looked down. "Then why?" "Because he stopped pretending," she whispered. "And because I wanted to know what it felt like to be wanted without shame." Sam didn't answer, but he reached over, took her hand, and held it like he did with Amai. "Wait saung siriang ti hari ihan tilay. Chi." The next morning there was a knock at the door. She opened it to find Alexander standing on the porch. No suit, no driver, no entourage. Just him, holding a small black notebook. "I believe this is yours," he said, handing her the journal. "You left it." She took it silently. "And?" "And I came to tell you I let it break me. The article, the fallout, the look on your face when you realized what I'd risked by not protecting you sooner." She stepped aside. He didn't walk in, just stood in the doorway. "You were right," he said. "I didn't stop it. I didn't act fast enough. I didn't deserve the way you trusted me, but I want to learn how to." She looked at him. He looked tired. Honest, for the first time not in control. I lost my job, she said. I know, and I'm so sorry. I'm not, she said. It reminded me who I was before you, and who I want to be beside you, not behind you. He smiled, small and grateful. Then help me build something. Not just a life, a place, a new foundation, for people like you, like us. What do you mean? A rural leadership program, scholarships, apprenticeships, real tools for real people. You'd run it, you'd shape it, I'd just fund it. She didn't answer right away. Then she said, one condition. Anything. No secrets, no saving me, just walking beside me. Deal, he said. She stepped forward, touched his chest and whispered, You said I undid you, but maybe you needed to come undone. I did, he said, and you're the only person I want to put me back together. They kissed on the porch, quiet, soft, nothing showy, not a grand gesture, just truth. The farm dog barked once, the wind rustled the trees, and somewhere beyond the fields, the world turned slower for a moment. Because sometimes the girl who comes from nowhere becomes the center of everything. And sometimes a man who had everything learns that the one thing worth keeping can't be bought, only earned. For the first time in weeks, the sun felt warm instead of exposing. Ellie stood on the back porch of her family's farmhouse, sipping weak coffee and staring across the acres of land that had once felt like the edge of her world. Now it felt like the center. After that morning with Alexander on the porch, things hadn't snapped back to perfect. There were no dramatic makeups or viral declarations of love. Instead, he left without another word, giving her space, truly this time, and she needed it, because forgiveness wasn't something you gave like a wrapped gift. It was something that unfolded slowly, layer by layer, until the anger stopped feeling necessary. He had bet on her innocence. He had underestimated her worth, but somewhere in the aftermath, he had also chosen truth. She saw it in the way he showed up quietly, no headlines, no cameras, just him. But even now, days later, she didn't know if she was ready to let the world back in, especially his world. That afternoon, she walked the property line, her boots sinking slightly into the thawing soil. Sam was at school. The house was quiet. Her heart was not. In her pocket was a business card. Not his, but one from the foundation he mentioned, Rural Futures. It didn't exist yet, but the title was clear. Ellie Parker, Program Director. She hadn't said yes. She hadn't said no. She just carried it with her like a maybe she wasn't ready to unpack. That evening she opened her old journal. The pages were filled with unfinished thoughts, some angry, some hopeful, all real. On the last page, in handwriting that wasn't hers, were 6 words. I will never bet on you again. Her breath caught. She didn't cry. She just closed the journal and sat very still. In Manhattan, Alexander stood in a boardroom that once felt like his kingdom. Now it felt smaller, quieter. He had handed off day-to-day operations of the company to his CFO. Investors were nervous. Blake was livid. But Alexander didn't flinch, because for once he wasn't chasing returns. He was chasing redemption. The foundation paperwork had been submitted. The first donors were lined up. He had chosen a property in upstate New York for the headquarters, a converted barn with history, charm, and no signal. It wasn't a move people understood, but Ellie would. At least, he hoped she would. The next week, he didn't visit. He didn't call. He just sent her an email with one sentence. The keys are yours if you want them. She didn't reply. Not right away. She walked to the old post office in town, picked up a package he had sent. Inside was a leather-bound folder and a hand-drawn blueprint of the barn conversion. The center of the page had her name, in neat, confident print, under the title, Executive Vizie. That night, Ellie lay awake staring at the ceiling. She thought about what it meant to rebuild, not a building, but a belief in someone. She didn't love the way he had met her, but she couldn't deny that the man he became after her mattered more than the mistake. She thought about the girls who lived in towns like hers, who believed they had to shrink to survive, who believed their innocence made them weak, and then she thought about his voice when he told her, "You were never weak. You were unshakable." The next morning she packed a bag, 2 flannel shirts, a notebook, a photo of her and Sam as kids. She left a note for her brother, told him she'd be back in 3 days. When she arrived at the barn, the door was unlocked. Dust floated in warm beams of light. She walked slowly, ran her hand along the edge of the rough wooden table in the center. He wasn't there, just the quiet thrum of a building waiting to be filled. She found a toolbox in the corner, hammered in the first nail herself, hung the blueprint on the wall, pinned her own note beneath it, her first step as program director: listen more than you speak. Outside, a black SUV pulled up. She didn't hear it, but when she turned, Alexander was standing in the doorway. He looked tired, windblown, almost nervous. "Didn't expect you," he said. "Didn't decide until this morning." "Is it a yes?" he asked. "It's not a no," she replied. "Good," he said, "because I've been building this in my head for weeks, but I didn't want to build it without you." She turned to face him fully. "Do you mean the foundation or the rest of it?" "Both," he said, "especially the rest." He stepped closer. "You made me realize something I was too arrogant to admit before. I didn't fall for the version of you I imagined. I fell for the version that terrified me, the one who said no when I expected yes, the one who didn't need saving but saved me anyway." She didn't speak. She just looked at him. Then slowly, she held out the journal. "If you ever lie to me again, you'll never see this again." He smiled, a little crooked. "Deal." She reached out, took his hand and said, "Then help me start this. Let's build something that doesn't require pretending." "Only if you promise one thing," he said. "What?" "That you'll keep undoing me, a little at a time, until I forget who I was without you." She laughed, quiet and genuine. "You're so dramatic. You bring it out of me." "Fine," she said, "but you're scrubbing the toilets the first month." "Done," he replied. "You think I'm joking?" "I hope you're not." That night, they didn't sleep in the barn, but they stayed there late, sitting on the floor, sharing stories, making plans, sketching futures. When he finally leaned in to kiss her, it wasn't a dare. It was a decision. She let him, not because he had changed, but because he had chosen to. And in that space between silence and intention, something real began. Not a fairy tale, but a foundation, because the girl who once mopped marble floors now laid blueprints on old barn walls, and the man who once bet on taking something was learning how to build something that couldn't be bought: trust, respect, and something dangerously close to love. The wind that passed through the hills didn't bite anymore. It carried the scent of cut grass, distant pine, and something else: hope. Ellie stood at the top of the ridge behind the barn, overlooking the plot of land they'd cleared for the youth retreat cabins. Just a few wooden frames for now, but each one a promise. Behind her, laughter spilled from the barn doors where 3 girls fresh from a long drive from another dusty corner of America were painting handmade signs that read words like strength and voice. Alexander was inside too, sleeves rolled up, arguing with the contractor about window height like it was the most important thing in the world. And maybe today, it was, because this wasn't a company, it wasn't a business deal. It was hers, the first thing she'd ever built that didn't belong to someone else. She felt him before she saw him, the steady footsteps on gravel, the way her heart stilled not with nerves, but with grounding. He came up beside her quietly, holding out a thermos. "Not coffee," he said. "I finally learned your tea order." She took it, unscrewed the lid, and sipped. It was exactly right. "I didn't ask you to change," she said softly. "I know," he replied, That's why I did. She looked at him then, not the billionaire, not the bet maker, but the man who had learned that power meant nothing if you couldn't look someone in the eye and ask to stay. You remember that first night? She asked. The dare? He winced. I do, more than I want to. It doesn't hurt anymore, she said, but it's never going to be pretty. I know. Still, she added, I'm glad it happened, because if you had met me any other way, I'm not sure you would have looked twice. You're wrong, he said. If I had passed you on a dirt road with paint on your hands and purpose in your step, I would have stopped the car. She smiled, small and soft. Even if I smelled like goats? Especially then. They stood in silence for a while. Below them, the girls were putting the final touches on the new sign. Ellie read the words aloud. This is where stories begin. She turned to Alexander. You think that's true? I think ours just did, he said. Not with a bet, not with a kiss, but with the first time you looked at me like I was a man and not a challenge. She nodded. And you looked at me like I was more than the version you wanted to win. I don't want to win anymore, he said. I want to walk beside someone who makes me forget what I used to chase. She reached for his hand, not dramatic, not trembling, just steady. Then keep walking, but know this place, this work, my voice. It's not yours to hold. You get to share it, not shape it. Understood. No more games. None left to play. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows over the land. In a city somewhere far behind them, contracts still buzzed, elevators still rose, and power still changed hands. But here, the rules were different, and sometimes the most unexpected stories begin not with the perfect moment, but with the broken one. The one that forces you to unlearn everything you thought you knew about desire, control, and who deserves to be seen. Ellie Parker was never the prize in someone's dare. She was the lesson. And Alexander Grayson, the man who had once tried to take something in a single night, would spend every night after trying to deserve what she gave him freely. Not her innocence, her truth, her time, her hand, and maybe, eventually, her heart. But only because he finally learned how to ask for it the right way,